Let's just go across live then to Rajiv Kumar of the NITI Ayog. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, sir. Now, let me just dive straight into this, because as I just mentioned in my introduction, jobs is been the big headline for the past several weeks, almost past several years. But other than this somewhat vague pronouncement in the budget, we didn't hear anything else about how this government plans to create jobs.
Basu, the entire budget in some sense is about job creation, because jobs are created by promoting and stimulating economic activity. Jobs do not drop from the skies. Jobs are not created in a vacuum. And I've been persistently asking this question, and I asked this also yesterday in my press conference, which is that when an economy is growing at 7.1%,
yes,
and please note that this figure has been accepted by all the international organizations like the IMF, the World Bank, the ADB, etc., etc.
Yes.
And therefore, if the nominal rate of growth is about 11%, then you have to explain to me as to where this growth is coming from, especially in a situation where the banking sector has been pretty much kaput,
right,
because of the mess that we found it in 2014. So, if you just decompose growth, which is what normally economists do,
yes,
it would have to come from creation of jobs. Now,
but
as
Mr.
the
Kumar,
finance minister was saying,
yeah,
the nature of jobs has been changing in this country,
right,
and there's a much larger number of jobs being created in the non-government sector,
yes,
and in the services sector, and this budget is about stimulating consumption and investment, which will generate jobs.
But Mr. Kumar, when you say that we should assume by default that if the economy is growing at 7+% that some jobs are being created, you are aware, of course, of the phenomenon of jobless growth. And there is enough data to suggest, enough evidence to suggest that India may be entering that territory. So how does one make that automatic assumption?
I think also this is entirely No, there's no automatic assumption here. You have to, as I said, there's something which is very much a Econ 101, that if economy is growing at certain rate, this growth has to come either from an increase in employment, or an increase in the capital stock,
right,
or an increase in the total factor productivity.
Right.
There has never been a situation when total factor productivity goes up by more than 2, 3 or 4%. And if the capital stock, which is investment to GDP ratio, for which the government has been at other times criticized that it has been declining,
yeah,
where would this growth come from? It's not an automatic assumption. But the other thing is that, as I said, but as I was saying, that there are different narratives about this job, and there are sectors after sectors in which new jobs have been created,
right,
and will be created because of the stimulus that has been given to growth.
Right. Mr. Kumar, the reason why there is so much skepticism about this, as you know, and this was one of the things that you tackled in your press conference yesterday, is that whatever data that is coming out about unemployment is suggesting that things are getting worse. Now, this NSSO report, the so-called, the report which was buried and which the Business Standard reported on, actually suggested that we've had the worst unemployment in nearly 5 decades, right? Now, you're saying that one of the defenses that I heard offered was that this report is not final. But we've had Mr. Mohanan, who is the acting head of the National Statistical Commission, saying that this was a report that he had finalized, that the commission had finalized, but the government wasn't releasing it.
Yes. No, but you see, I wish that you hadn't gone into this, because I was hoping that we'll discuss the budget. But now that you've raised it,
yes,
I have to repeat myself, which is that for any further clarification of what Professor Mohanan said, you will have to, of course, ask him. But when this report was presented to me, yes, and to some other colleagues in the government, yes, we quickly recognized that there are some things that needed to be done here, especially that we had to calculate the change in employment and change in unemployment between different quarters. And this could not be done until you got data for, right, the subsequent quarters, which is from July to September 2018 and October to December 2018. I wish Mr. Professor Mohanan and Professor Meenakshi had also seen into this and had also recognized this. But they didn't, and that is their problem. So therefore, for us, this is still a draft report. Right. We haven't cleared it. We have not, and the government hasn't accepted it. and therefore we will release this data, as I said, in March. But as the CEO, Mr. Amitabh Kant, was at great pains to explain,
yes,
there are many different narratives about these jobs.
Right.
And I tell you, one argument I give to you is that growth cannot just simply happen without jobs being created or capital investment being made.
Yeah.
The second thing is that, the highest unemployment levels in 5 decades,
okay,
with this kind of growth rate over the last 5 years.
Yes.
I mean, one is completely, completely impossible, and two, this would have, you can imagine that this would lead to severe social unrest in the country.
But let me ask you.
So.
Okay,
and
but listen,
happened, thankfully.
But sir, as you know, as someone who's an economist, someone who is a technocrat, we ultimately have to go by credible evidence. Now, you referred to what Amitabh Kant said, and Amitabh Kant said a bunch of things. Yes. He said that we don't have any official data at the moment, right? There's no official data on jobs, but he said our internal estimates show that 8 million jobs, which is about 80 lakh jobs, are being created a year. Now, what's the source of this?
Yes. The source of this is some data that we have collected from the EPFO, from the National Pension Scheme, from the transport sector, from the medical sector, from the tourist sector.
Right.
There is a small cell in NITI Ayog which works on this. This is the data that we have collected from the papers produced by Ghosh and Ghosh, which was published, and all of these point towards the fact that there have been between 7 to 8 million jobs created, in each year. Now, this is enough to take care of the new entrants to the workforce, but not enough to take care either of the backlog or of those wanting to move from, low productivity to high productivity, or low income to high income jobs. What Amitabh also said, Vasu, was that we accept that the nature of the jobs may not meet the aspirations of our young people.
Yes.
And that is a task to be done. And that is the quality of the jobs has to be improved. And yes, of course, we admit to that.
No, but are you
willing
willing
to say that the number of jobs has fallen?
Yeah.
I think it's just simply impossible.
No, are you willing to say, are you willing to vouch for this 7 to 8 million figure that you've cited? Are you saying this is an official number that the NITI Ayog has collected? And then if you have, why not put it out? Well, why not release it?
We will. I hope we will. And if the CEO of NITI Ayog has gone public with this data, this is of course what NITI Ayog stands for. And we are trying to put it together. But we were still waiting for the NSSO's survey that has come out.
Yeah.
And we want to finalize this, because that will clearly be the official figure, as it were, because whatever NITI Ayog does will still be considered as not as pakka as the household survey that is being done by the NSSO.
But Mr. Kumar, with all respect, the National Statistical Commission is the final authority on the NSSO data, and they claim, their head claims that they have validated it. And the reason he said why he resigned is exactly because of the fact that the government is sitting on this report. Now, isn't it legitimate to assume that this is simply, this is suppressing information, and it's also questioning the credibility of our data and statistical organizations, which, as you know, have always been world-class and unimpeachable?
So I've said enough about this in my press conference yesterday, and I do, with all due respect, want to now refrain from discussing this any further.
Okay. Let me not ask you about the NSSO report, though. Let me just put to you the fact that, as you assert, that there is evidence to suggest jobs are being created, as you said, on the basis of some information which Amitabh Kant has put together. The counter to that, sir, is this, that outside of that, every other single survey or report, leave aside this NSSO report, but even the CMI survey, which said that about 1 crore jobs were lost in 2018, the State of Working India report put out by Azim Premji says employment shrank by 70 lakh between 2013 to 15. All of these, the Labour Bureau's 6th annual unemployment survey says unemployment rose to 5.4% in 2016-17, the highest in a decade. What are you saying? All of this evidence is just to be dismissed? These are all credible sources of
So the Azim Premji
data.
report, the Azim Premji report that you refer to is for 2013 to 2015.
Yes.
And that was a different period, if you like.
Yes.
The Labor Bureau figures only refer to only 8 sectors of the economy, which were started collecting out of the 2008 crisis,
Right.
and therefore do not present the picture of the full economy at all. The only survey that is often cited and bandied about is the CMIE survey, which
Right.
claims to be the household survey in the field, etc., and for which the CMIE promoter, the proprietor, Mr. Mahesh Vyas, is writing continuously about it,
Yes.
in the Business Standard. The fact is that people like Surjit Bhalla and others have questioned the methodology of that survey.
Okay.
And I dare say that this is something that I have also asked Mr. Vyas to authenticate. So, the data that you're citing, is actually incomplete, and therefore, but this is the whole issue here, which is that, as I said, if there was this situation of massive job losses in the economy, of a young population which is aspiring, which is aspirational, which is not going to take it lie down, would it not result?
Yes.
I mean, you please answer me this question. I've asked you 2 questions to which I've got no answers at all.
Okay.
Where does growth come from?
Right.
If not from increasing employment. And 2,
Right.
if there was these huge job losses,
Okay.
would that not show up in some social unrest in the country?
Okay.
Of the
Can I
sort that I had witnessed when I was young,
Right.
in the late 60s, and I had joined college, when there was that kind of unemployment, and
Okay.
it did affect and it did result in the sort of social unrest that we went through in those days.
Okay. Look, I'm not the economist. I'm not the expert here. But let me say a few things on this. But hold on.
Basu,
Since you've
Basu,
asked me.
but
No,
Basu,
since you've
these are-
asked me, let me respond. Let me
Just one
respond.
second.
No, let me respond. Let me respond. Let me try to respond. When you talk of social unrest, sir, you would have noted that in the past several years, we have seen huge agitations in state after state, basically on the basis of jobs. We've seen Marathas marching in the thousands in Maharashtra. We've seen Kapus marching for the thousands in Andhra Pradesh. We've seen community after community, whether it's the Jats, these are all, by the way, fairly affluent or what are called progressive forward castes. There's continuous public agitation on the subject of jobs. One can cite example after example. You talked about, again, this question of how can you have high growth and not have jobs. I'll just put to you something that the Azim Premji, State of India Working Report mentions. It says that GDP growth is creating fewer jobs now. It says a 10% increase in GDP now results in a less than 1% increase in employment. In the 70s and 80s, 3 to 4% GDP growth saw 2% growth in employment.
Yeah, thanks for actually citing those figures, citing those instances of the community movements, etc., and thanks for also saying that these were people who were relatively affluent, because the Maratha agitation was not marching but was in motorcycles that they drove into Mumbai. The
So
Jat
also
agitation,
marched.
as you know, was that of the the Jat agitation or the Gujar agitation in Rajasthan or Haryana,
Yes.
or also that of the people who are relatively well off. It was very evident from all the evidence that was collected there. And that is what really, that is what reinforces the statement that I made. Yes, that the ground reality of the jobs does not meet the aspirations, the high aspirations of our young class, which is
Okay.
well off. These agitations are not by people who are in some sense the wretched of the earth.
Right.
They are not by people who are poor. They are not by people who have gone jobless and who have gone hungry. Thank God for that.
Okay,
And
let me ask you.
These are agitations by communities and by people who want better and better and better, lifestyles and jobs. Yes, and I accepted that.
let me ask
about
you-
about the employment elasticity of GDP.
Okay. Let me ask you in
Just one second,
conclusion.
about the employment elasticity of GDP.
Let me ask you in conclusion.
Okay.
Because we were all waiting on the NITI Ayog to come up with data on jobs. We were told that it would happen towards the end of the year, September, October. Now we're almost into February. Now you're saying it's going to come out in March. But let me ask you this, because one of the things that you were supposed to look at was whether Mudra was creating jobs. And again, Mudra came up in the budget today. Do we know how many jobs Mudra has created?
We don't have a firm number, but what the finance minister omitted from his speech was to say that of the 15 crore loans that have been given,
yes,
4.4 or 4.6 crore have been given to new borrowers.
Right.
And if there are new borrowers, 4.4, 40 million or so of new borrowers, these must represent self-employed people who are in addition to whatever else has happened.
All right.
So I think, I mean, however you discount that figure, you can reduce it by 50% and still you get about 20 million people who are now self-employed because of the Mudra loan.
All right, okay. Well, fair enough, and let's wait to see then when these NITI Ayog figures come out. But thank you always, Rajiv Kumar, for joining us and taking all my questions. Thanks very much indeed.
Always a pleasure.